Well, I normally start these videos out by telling you all good morning, but it's pretty late in the evening here on Sunday. I wanted to get a quick recording in tonight because I have to travel tomorrow, and I just didn't want to. I want to make sure I got this out to you. So let's dig into this. I got a lot I want to share with you, just some stuff I've been thinking about this weekend. All right, we've got a couple of events that happened over the weekend. We saw some very strong onshore flow in the Pacific Northwest, and you can see the effects here of the coastal rain kind of hitting the mountains. And then we also got some snow and some moisture that got farther into the interior. There's still a pretty hard line if you kind of find San Francisco and go directly west and east, where we're not seeing much, if any, precipitation south of that. And the rain shadow effect here in Montana is pretty pronounced. I'm heading to Montana, so I will going to talk with a group of growers there just about some of the pretty wild ride we've seen on precipitation. It was a really wet midsummer, but then we got very, very dry at the end. And so drought's going to be a major concern in this area as we go into winter, unless this La Nina kind of punches above its weight class. We'll come back to La Nina a little bit. We then saw the low that started in California last week, moved over the Four Corner States, and is now living here. And it's cut off from the main flow, which we talked about on Friday, and it's going to be slowly moving east. One of the bigger differences between what we'd been discussing late last week and this week is the phasing of this low with a much deeper trough that's coming through. They're going to be out of phase, and that's going to be important for the development of the next system that follows. So all of that, plus, we've had some pretty strong winds blowing across the Great Lakes, giving us some lake effect rain here. And we have, I'll be asking this question: are we going to unleash some cold air this winter, especially early? Our best lake effect snow events are honestly in November and December and early January, before the lakes get cold and frozen. And so we're going to have to see if we can get more of that. But let's go and have a look at some satellite data here, just to kind of give you a look at the day on Sunday. A couple of fun things to kind of point out on this. There was actually several places across the country where we were dealing with some fog early on Sunday. And while the big low that's rolling through the midsection of the country, or just the strong onshore flow in the west, I mean, look at how fast these upper level winds are blowing these cloud tops off here. What I was starting to notice here is just a couple important things. First of all, we did see some severe weather that moved across Texas with that low that you just kind of saw me point out here. And I'm waiting to see how much of the moisture of this low can get into the southeast, and then the subsequent lows and what they can do with reviving some of the drought situation that is in the eastern United States. But I mentioned fog a moment ago, and I wanted to show you something here. I was kind of keeping an eye on Texas, for example, and look at these fogs we saw setting up in some of these valleys here early this morning, or just the very low, dense cloud that was over eastern Texas into Louisiana following the weekend storms that were in Texas. Kind of found that pretty interesting. And then as I went more toward the southwest, take a look at this. This is Southern California. And coming off of the mountains here, take a look at this very, very interesting cloud shield that's building off the Southern Sierra. It actually ended up having a few gravity waves in it, as you can see here, which is, again, initiated by the mountains themselves. But also to point out, there was quite a bit of fog in like the LA Basin and here along this very productive region closer to the coast, deep in these valleys here, right in through this pocket. So always fascinating to look at this satellite data to kind of find these features. But the most important thing going on satellite right now for the for the Western Hemisphere, if you ask me, is Melissa. Right now, a Category 4 strength hurricane. This is some minute by minute view here from GOES 19, looking at the long wave infrared satellite data. So when you look at this, just a reminder. The darkest colors in here are actually where we have our coldest cloud tops. And this is a very intense, very symmetric system right now. I know you can see a lot of convection here, but that's not impacting the strength of what's going on in the eye. And there's some very interesting banding and spiraling effect that I think is of note here. That is a strong indicator of just how powerful this system is, and will likely continue to strengthen as it heads toward Jamaica. Now, if we look at what the current forecast is from the National Hurricane Center, it is expected very soon, by the time most of you wake up and see this in the morning, to be at Category 5 strength with wind speeds over 155. And we will probably maintain that strength as it hits Jamaica, which means we're looking at a massive natural disaster hitting Jamaica, and then subsequently this eastern side of Cuba. Now, as you see the forecast here, I want to remind you that after this goes through Jamaica here, as you see in the super ensemble, and then turns and goes through that part of Cuba, it seems as though, using the best guidance, that the probability of having any piece of this getting pulled into the northwestern Canadian Maritimes, at least this side of it, is very limited. All right, there are a couple of ensemble members out there, but I don't want to give them too much attention, given the depth of the trough that's coming through here on and around Halloween. Now, had that trough been cut off and much farther to the south, then I would worry about what's left of Melissa getting pulled here. But as it stands, the main focus is going to be on just how much rain and how strong the winds will be across Jamaica and across Cuba. Now, if I just use the GFS as an idea, we're looking at 2+ feet of rainfall easily in this area. This is going to be a major, major disaster for Jamaica, and we need to be just watching and prepared, knowing that this is going to be coming through this area. I went out and look at this new tool I'm working on for all of you. This is my international forecasting tool. Because we're in Jamaica, I'm going to use millimeters. We're outside of the U.S. here, so most other countries do use millimeters as their measurement of precipitation. Just remember, 25 millimeters is an inch. So when you start to get to 500, millimeters, we're talking about 20+ inches of rainfall being predicted by the GFS and the European model. The AI model is also in a similar camp. And this is this is in Kingston. We're looking at a massive disaster. Then as this system goes through Cuba, I was watching the ECMW forecast of wave height. This is significant wave height. And so we do take note that by Tuesday afternoon, as this is between Jamaica and Cuba, there are going to be, because of the wind system that's coming through the Mid-South now as I'm speaking, as it gets to the coast, we're expecting some strong winds here, blowing up the waves. But then you'll note that as this develops fully and moves through the Bahamas, this side of the Bahamas, that this hurricane will quickly find its way into the North Atlantic and strengthen what is already, a very, very choppy North Atlantic in terms of large waves. And eventually, the remnants of Melissa will hit like Great Britain and the British Isles here. So we'll continue to pay attention to the after effects of this once it moves through. Now, as you saw, there is some risk, let's go back to it, of this system making a hit on Bermuda. So Bermuda is here. It will likely be weakened by the time it gets there. There's going to be increased shear, much cooler waters than it's currently living over now, but it still could be an impactful system there as well. Okay, with all that being said, look at this pattern we're in, all right? Helping push Melissa in this direction is kind of where our Bermuda high is. Now, I know this is up a little higher than we typically look for the Bermuda high, but it's here. It's actually split. There's a piece there and there's a piece here. When you look across the rest of the planet, though, there's a very strong extension of the Pacific jet here. And take a look at the Atlantic. It's coming out of the eastern United States and just ripping across with very, very strong winds. And what's important about assessing where these strong winds have originated and where they're going is going to be where our weather systems are going to come from and then what it's doing to the entire planet. So expect to see systems that come through the Northwest into the Canadian prairie and then dive. They're going to come over this ridge, which is going to keep so much of the southeast mild all the way over into parts of Texas and dry. I said southeast. I meant southwest. Forgive me. And this is also going to set us up for, after these systems come through into week 2, probably a drier pattern for a big section of the United States. But with so much speed coming around the base of these very deep troughs, one entering the United States and Canada from the west, the other one hitting much of Europe, Northern Europe from the west, we have seen this. Take note of this little spot right in through here where the measured relative momentum, Earth relative momentum versus latitude and average is so much higher. So there, and also another spot in the southern hemisphere right here. Now, what is this? This is 30 north to almost 50 north. That's right in the sweet spot for the mid-latitudes in both situations. But what we need to take note of is that the forecast suggests that we will likely see the global angular momentum diving by mid-November. So you're saying, all right, tell me again what that means. Well, when our global wind oscillation, which is this graphic, or the atmospheric angular momentum, the previous two graphics, when the values drop, we tend to get more global ridging. And you can see here in the forecast that for the next 3 weeks, global momentum may drop. Now, where are we in global momentum? This is kind of an interesting graphic. You know that since August, we lost it, right? This is one of the big reasons why the Bermuda high drifted, just to give you an example. And this is also another reason why the western United States saw a wetter and cooler end of summer and start of fall. But with the acceleration of the jet across the Pacific, okay, and the North Atlantic, and then the strong jet stream that's down here running across the southern hemisphere. This is a part of this, what we call the southern annular mode. It's movement around. We've seen momentum come back up. But La Nina is still the dominant signal, and that is this feature right in through here. And I want to take this in a few moments and try to build a case for you as to what could possibly be the November-December transition based upon that. Okay, so we're going to come back to that in a second. All right, where are we right now, though? This is mid-level flow. There is the moisture streaming into the west. Here's the little cutoff low we're thinking about that's going to move slowly to the east, and there's Melissa. Now, what is going to happen is we're going to bust apart temporarily this odd, like, meridional split flow as this system comes through. And that's what's going to deliver several systems kind of in a direction like this that then turn up the coast to finish out October and start, in other words, this week getting into next week. But as it stands late this evening, let's get an update on this about 9:40 p.m. Central Time. We have the winter weather advisories for the Cascades and the Rockies. Actually, a winter storm warning here in this corner of Wyoming. We've already had multiple frost events here, but there is freeze warnings that are along the coast of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And again, like I said, the reason why these are still out here is simply because the lakes had moderated the temperatures just on shore, which is why we haven't had hard freezes just yet in these regions, but we're going to be aware of that. A couple of other spots to think about: flood watch in Florida. We have high winds here in parts of the west. And so taking all of that in, let's just pick it up with like a week-long forecast. So we've made a good understanding of what's going on here. We know that we're drier, almost a rain shadow type effect there, because we're sending systems over and they're developing in this direction. All right. So we have some moisture coming into parts of the Red River Valley of the North, the Midwest, but the heaviest rains are going to be down here in parts of the Mid-South, Southeast Appalachian Mountains. And to kind of focus in on that just temporarily here using Sunday's model runs, you can see that some of these precipitation totals could really go a long way at relieving drought pressure in these areas, which we're monitoring very, very carefully. So I'm going to pick this up with the NAM run from late in the day on Sunday. As we kind of watch this go through, again, you can see the moisture coming into the west. This is why we've got the winter weather advisories. Some of that snow is moving, like you see, through more of Idaho. We're watching the system bypass, for the most part, Montana, most of Montana. But as you can see here, there's going to be better precipitation in North Dakota, getting into parts of Manitoba. Meanwhile, I'm out, this is 11 a.m. Monday. Many of you are watching it about that time. We're watching the moisture spread east here. And then we're going to keep that moisture going through, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, that intersection pressing all the way to the coast. Now, meanwhile, as that system slows itself down Tuesday into Wednesday, the wave that follows it, I'm going back and forth here on the day on Tuesday, the wave that follows it is what's going to dig even deeper into this system and setting us up just before Halloween. Now, we knew that system was going to be there, but it was the phasing. I didn't know if they were going to be closer. If they were closer, you'd have one dig, the other eject, and we'd be talking about a mega nor'easter. But they seem to be far enough apart in the models right now that may not occur. So let me show you this, okay? This is the upper level pattern. See how far apart the lead wave is from the kicker behind it. So what is very different about this is now the timing of when the kicker wave comes through. Being out of phase with the lead wave meant that Melissa's chance of getting sucked into the U.S. has been diminished, which is good. That's very good. It's still a terrible disaster unfolding here, but in terms of a U.S. impact, this is preventing it. I mean, that's one of the big pieces. There's multiple things going on, but one of the big pieces. But that's Wednesday the 29th, and that low digs deep into the northeast, and here we are on Thursday. So we can get behind this quite a bit of cold air leading into Halloween, and we're going to see where the inclement weather is. Now, the west, we're going to warm up. Even, way out here, we're going to see a surge of warmth coming in after middle of this week as this ridge kind of rebuilds itself. Look at the size of that. But the reality is we're going to start November with a pretty amplified pattern favoring colder here and deep troughs of low pressure built on that jet extension we talked about for weeks now in the Gulf of Alaska. Now, the farther out I go into week 2, the models want to keep it. See this? And if you have downslope, forgive me, if you have flow out of the northwest, it looks like a slope, doesn't it? But this is convergent flow this time of year, which means much of the west, much of the central and midwest are going to be drier. We're going to be colder east, but more, inclement weather to the east as we press out there into week 2. So what I think is important to look at is the near-term features and how they're, like I said, phasing or not phasing. And then we'll look out there at that pattern again and try to understand it. So our lead wave through Tuesday spreads its rain over to the mid-Atlantic and the Carolinas. The much deeper wave is still coming through the Midwest, upper Midwest. We'll look at total precip. Now this one digs in hard here. And this is, mid-south. And don't forget, there's another wave in both the models following it by Wednesday. And that's the one that's going to curl itself up the east and then is going to get reinforcement from these next two short waves coming through here. It's in both models. This is pretty good agreement out all the way to Friday. And as they dig in, this is going to be this system that exits the northeast on Halloween, and the next one digs into the Red River Valley of the North on Halloween as well. Meanwhile, there's ridging west, and the warm-up, the drier conditions are going to be present. But as we start the month of November, that is a deep low that is digging into this area, ushering in another round of pretty cold air into this particular spot. And it's also bringing in precip, so let's get that out and talk about it. Starting off early Monday morning and playing, we have the lead wave, the wave behind it. This is the one that's originated here, coming through the west. And what's going to happen is, there it is. See it deepening, tightly wound low. And that low is going to spin its way over to the east and roll quickly north-south. See it? Watch it. Where am I in time? This is next Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday. There it is. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that is later than projected from a week ago, simply because we thought the phasing of the wave that's going through the mid-south now and the one that follows this guy here, we thought they'd be closer together. At least I did. And it's a bit off. Now you can see some snow with this. And watch, if you just keep an eye on what comes down after this, this rain coming in here, it's in both models. Start off this new month, it's chilly. And look at the snow being predicted on the backside of this Sunday, November the 2nd. And it's going to get windy. And I think we need to start talking about some of the white stuff here. Because the European model, let's just play it all out. This is through the next 10 days. Some of you might see your first snowflakes in this area. I'm not saying it's going to be massive and accumulating, but it's got some for the windward side of the Appalachian Mountains. It's got some here in northern Wisconsin, the UP, and certainly where the best flow is still entering British Columbia around the ridge. We've got this, and some of this is coming right now in the next 48 hours. Probability-wise, though, I want you to see that the best chance at grabbing another inch out of this is from the lead wave being followed by the kicker wave rolling up the East Coast. So this is our wettest corridor, these two areas plus the Pacific Northwest. And if you want to know chances of getting 2 inches, it's pretty high through Tennessee, Kentucky, coming out of the Boot Heel, clipping parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas. And we need moisture there. If you have a look, that area is very dry. Subsurface soil moisture is lacking, as it is also lacking throughout a big section of the Midwest, upper Midwest Great Lakes. I will be definitely talking about the regional drought issues in Montana as I head up there, but take note of what's going on in Texas. Now, you know that I've had a major concern about this area into the southeast for the next 6 months. And my primary reason for that is if we get any sort of a classic La Nina signal, that's going to be a problem area. And we've already noticed that so far in this month of October, this is just month to date, we need the moisture that's coming through with this first system badly. It's been very, very dry here. I know you're looking at these Texas values, and yes, they got rain this weekend, but there's still a signal there that I can't ignore. I am less worried about this area. I am more concerned about the southwest, the south central, and the southeast going through winter. And I'm going to make a case for that here in just a few moments. But I want to give you the week 2 forecast. The AI is the outlier right now, okay? In terms of how wet it is here and there. But if you have a look, most of the models into week 2 are reflecting, let's just look at the CPC as an example. They're reflecting this pattern where this ridge is going to try to open up and keep this whole region a bit drier. We could be still a little bit wetter in the northwest, but that seems to be the pattern that's playing out. On to temperatures. This is our 7-day frost risk. Now, this is Sunday through next Saturday. But what I'm noticing here is we're going to get chances of bringing in some really cold air all the way to the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma. If we look at those minimum temperatures, we can gauge when that's going to get there. A lot of cold air leaving the northeast right now. Big warm up in the central U.S. in terms of overnight lows. But this is Tuesday into Wednesday. And you can start to see these much colder temperatures here coming off the front range into the high plains down to the Texas, Oklahoma panhandles and parts of New Mexico. That's Wednesday morning. There's Thursday. That cold air is getting pretty far to the south. Friday, the west is warming. The southeast is cooling. And it's going to get stuck into this pattern, I think, for a while. You see, if we let this stops at Saturday, but if we go out to the European model and pick it up on Saturday, just take a look at this. This is Sunday morning's lows. No, wait a minute. That switched over to 6 a.m. Oh, do we? when does daylight saving time end in 2025? Oh, it ends on November 2nd. I should know that. What I wanted to show you, yeah, my model already switched the date. So notice this is something kind of fun. Back here, it's like 7 a.m., 7 p.m., 1 p.m., 1 a.m. That's because I put this at Central Time, and we're 5 hours off. And then once we get to, there it is, we get that hour back, and 6 a.m. Sorry. Cool air coming through here on Sunday, into Monday, and Tuesday. I mean, look at these chilly temperatures starting to just invade the Midwest. While I think there's considerable warmth coming in the West comparatively. You can see that when you look at the kind of 5-day sliding window of temperatures. Here's the next 5 days. And there's day 5 through 10. Look at the West warming while the Southeast is cooling. So this is this pattern that the models were going after. And then is it out there farther into November? Well, this gets you out there from the time period of November 5th through November 10th. And we still see the Western U.S. warmer and the Eastern U.S. colder. And as you noted in Friday's video, that's kind of a flip over where we've been. For much of October, the West has been cool and very wet in places. The central United States has been much hotter compared to historical averages. Okay, what is all this? This is what I want to think about. On Friday, the Climate Prediction Center released their new outlook for week 3, week 4. And that's what you're seeing here. Okay. They've also had this for their 1-month outlook. This is their November forecast, but they issued this back on the 16th. Okay, they do it mid-month. They will update this the last day of the month. What I'm thinking about is how this region specifically deals with above average temperatures and drier weather, because the newest GFS outlook for November, down from eastern Texas all the way over through Mississippi, Alabama, even northern Georgia, this lower Mississippi basin and surrounding states has gone very dry, as has in the model so much of California and pockets of the Southwest. Now that's the GFS. As I mentioned, it always seems to be dry. But the European extended has some signal down here as well. And as you can see, it's not going after too much above average precipitation, for example, slamming into the Sierra Nevada. It has the eastern Great Lakes into the northeast wetter, has an active storm track across the northern tier of the U.S., all things we've kind of looked at. But I was thinking about all of this, and I'm curious. Now, I live in the Midwest, and you all know that. If I'm a Midwestern farmer and drought is going to occupy my thoughts in winter to spring, so if I'm here, my biggest concern is there. And the reason for this is that if this region stays or develops drought between now and next April and May, at any time, if that region is in drought, should the moisture return around the base of the Bermuda High, this is the area that gets the moisture first. You see, we don't supply this area of the country with much Pacific moisture. There's a big barrier here, a big barrier there, and a barrier here. And there's all mountains throughout this whole region. So it's hard to get Pacific moisture over. There is no source of moisture from Canada. What about the Great Lakes? Yeah, they're massive, but they're not a primary source of moisture. And if they are, it tends to be on the downwind side, as you know. We have the Appalachian Mountains blocking major transport of weather from here, but we don't often get a wind out of the east like that. So that leaves the Gulf as the primary source of moisture. So if this happens, and it's there during winter, and it's there during spring, it's not revived, then you could have plenty of precipitation here during the winter and have a drought in summer if it starts off super dry down here first. So I'm thinking about it because we're just preparing for another year. I mean, we're almost finished harvest for a lot of us. Okay, what do we got to think about? Think about that. Now, that's only for the folks in the Midwest. If I'm up the East Coast, man, I just got to get systems to do one of those two paths. Break the drought. They make big, monstrous nor'easters. They're terrible, but man, if I'm in the West, I need a 2-prong attack from the jet. One from the north, one from the southwest, and we erase drought there. So you see, we're kind of looking for these patterns and seeing how they're going to shape up. So I showed you a moment ago, I mean, both models, especially the GFS extended, is like, hey, it's going to be bone dry. So I went out to the lower Mississippi basin, and I want to show you something. In November, which is when that forecast was for, there is no trend on precipitation. I trended it back to 1950, and there's none. So we're not seeing some sort of systematic longer-term change specifically for November. But I wanted to know, well, what made us have these really dry years? Because that's what the models are suggesting. So I went digging, and I want to show you first. If you put all their driest years together, they're all listed up here. Take note of this. Much of the Pacific Northwest, getting all the way into this part of California, was wetter. But we were quite dry here. And the reason for that, okay, is the same reason why the temperatures were so mild in this area. So again, that's the precipitation pattern, drier versus wetter, and this is the temperature, colder versus hotter. Now, no surprise here. We have this very bunched up meridional flow that's doing that. So when you plant a big ridge in here in November, it's mild under it, and you are not tapping into the Gulf. There's no Gulf moisture. But there's systems that curl up out of the southeast and go north. The reason why the west is wet, because you're getting Gulf of Alaska troughs delivering moisture right here. And you've kind of heard me tell you that some of the pattern looks a bit like this right now, or at least we're trying to go into this as we look out there the next 2 weeks. Here's another point to think through. Those years, when you stitch them all together in November, they favored La Nina, very warm western Pacific, colder water developing in the Gulf of Alaska. What did we show last week? Well, we showed that the waters were getting cooler here. So there's a few things that are making sense with this, and so is this. On Friday, we dug into the MJO, right? We talked about it again. The MJO seems to want to be moving to phase, look, this is phase 5, and this is phase 6. And in those years in November, it lived in phases 5 and 6. And, if you go have a look at it, where's the MJO going over the next 5 days? 4 to 5, which is right in here. We expect it to kind of want to stay there. In fact, if you look, find this shading of green in here. It's just come out of the Indian Ocean. Okay, this would be like phase 1, 2, 3. And it's expected to move like that, which down here is 4, 5, 6. So this MJO seems to be, tucking itself more into this pattern after lying dormant for, the last 10 weeks. So I tried to make a case as to why we might be on the lookout for this pattern and how it might result in a November precipitation pattern looks something like this. Drier in this area, which is where the GFS and the European put it. And then I was like, well, what happened? Let's just say that this is how November shapes up, and these years are good historical analogs. Well, I went out there and I said, where did I put it? There we go. I said, well, what happened in December? It didn't really cure the dryness here. The Northwest stayed wetter. We were, when you put all the years together, there was no strong signal there, one way or the other. But we tended to be wetter, possibly suggesting storm systems that like to do that. I'm not sure. I didn't dig deep enough to see that. And it wasn't as though the Decembers were cold, right? Now, it's December. The temperature pattern is going to flip every other day. But it does not appear that we brought in brutally cold air in December. Now, last year was something similar in terms of the December weather. We were mild for most of it. And then January turned brutal. So I'm just trying to give you some more things to think about here as we wait on some of our new longer range global models, which are going to update at the beginning of the new month. All right. There's someone else who's watching this closely as well, and that is the folks down in Brazil. Mato Grosso, if you just take a look at where their planting progress is, they're about 3% above the 5-year average. And they're moving along pretty well, but the monsoon has not exactly come on and just been, mega strong and just brought in tremendous amounts of rain for everybody. What we know is that, remember a moment ago I was talking about where the MJO could go. Well, November to March, okay, I understand that we're still in October, but November to March, a phase 5 or phase 6 look is very dry for the Cerrado, for a lot of Brazil's growing area, and very wet farther to the south. Now, what's interesting about that is I don't know that we are fully into that time of year where you can use these analog maps or these composite analog maps for the MJO. I don't think we can do it just yet. But I'm doing this to illustrate for you that there's still a bit of an interesting model battle going on for November. Now, what's odd is it's the European model predicting the transition to phase 4, 5, and 6. Yet, in the month of November, it is going aggressively wetter here and drier there, which is the opposite of a typical phase 5, phase 6 setup. But the GFS is like, no, we're not. Look what the GFS extended is going to do. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. Let's go back to South America and put in a 30-day precip model. It's wetter here, but drier in Argentina and drier for, Tocantins, Mato Grosso, Para. I mean, these are huge growing areas that are showing up drier. Now, you probably noticed before I clicked on that, I want to show you this, that the temperatures, are looking pretty chilly. Like over the next 30 days, it's pretty chilly farther to the south and warmer to the north. You do need to take a look at a couple of things here. First of all, I already had this queued up for week 2, so I'm going to go back to it in a second. But the European model is wet week 2. That's maybe why it looks so wet for the rest of November. The GFS is a little wetter, but it's drier north. So I think we have a story developing in South America that needs to be watched carefully on who is going to be picking up the good November rains to finish planting of soybeans and who's not. I cannot pin this down because the argument made by the European model is counterintuitive to the movement of the MJO. But in the same breath, remember, the MJO right now, in the correlation maps I just showed you a moment ago here, I don't think these are fully established just yet. I think we have to get further into their late spring and summer before these are really strongly correlated. But I want to take you back here. In fact, let's just go back home. Let's go to weather models. I'm going to go to the European. Let's go to South America. I'm going to look at temperatures here. Temperatures. I do want to talk about this. Now, on my maps, I will put a hard contour around freezing. And I'm looking for some cold air to get into Argentina. Now, I saw it a couple of moments ago. Let's go back to the beginning. Like if you have a look, this is going to be this Wednesday morning. And there's some pretty cold air coming in through here. There's some, look along Chile and up in the Andes, very, very cold. There is, I think, some frost risk moving in. I think maybe it could be close to Cordoba, to Buenos Aires and south. I just want you to be aware that there's a spring frost issue that could be coming through. And it's just going to be something to be on the lookout for. But with that, I hope to talk to you all again on Wednesday when I get back from Montana. And Matt will pick this up on Tuesday. Hopefully the early video gives you a bit of a heads up. But please keep an eye on Jamaica and be thinking about these folks that are going to be dealing with this hurricane. There's going to be a massive need for help and rescue after this goes through. I hope they are preparing. Thankfully, Melissa is not fast. So there has been time to be prepared here. But just going to be thinking a lot about those folks the next couple of days. All right, that's it. You all be safe, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.